I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot of the mall, and my hands are shaking. My phone buzzes. Another message from him. Where are you? With no greeting, no punctuation after the question mark. Just that. Cold. Sharp. I don't respond. I stare at the dashboard, and I realize something that will change everything. I'm terrified of my own husband. My name is Sarah, and I'm about to tell you the story of how I lost myself in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside but was slowly suffocating me on the inside. This isn't about dramatic betrayal or infidelity, though I'll get to that. This is about something quieter. Darker. The kind of control that doesn't announce itself. The kind that whispers instead of shouts. 3 years ago, I was the happiest person I knew. James and I met at university. I was studying psychology, he was studying business. We had that kind of connection you read about in books, the kind where you finish each other's sentences and laugh at the same jokes and feel like you're the only two people in the world who truly understand each other. People used to ask us for relationship advice. We were the couple everyone wanted to be. James was charming. Intelligent. He had this way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the most important person in his universe. He remembered small details about my life. He knew I liked my coffee with exactly 1 sugar and a splash of oat milk. He knew I was insecure about my laugh being too loud, so he'd deliberately make jokes in public just to hear it. He made me feel seen in a way I'd never felt before. We moved in together after 2 years of dating. I remember the day we got the keys to our apartment. It was a small place, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We decorated it together. I chose the paint colors. He chose the furniture. We made decisions together about everything: where to eat, what movies to watch, how to split the bills. It felt like a real partnership. Money was never an issue because we didn't have much money, and we both accepted that. We were young, building our lives, saving what little we could. We had a joint account that we both contributed to equally. Every purchase over $100 was a conversation. Every decision was mutual. That's what I thought marriage would be: 2 people choosing each other, actively, every single day. But something shifted about 6 months after we got married. At first, I couldn't quite name it. It was subtle. Almost imperceptible. James started staying at the office longer. Not dramatically longer, just 30 minutes here, an hour there. When I asked him about it, he said the new project at work was demanding more of his attention. That made sense. I believed him. I didn't question it further. Then his phone became something he kept close to his body. He didn't used to be like that. Before, we were the kind of couple who didn't care about phones. We'd borrow each other's devices without asking. But one evening, I reached for his phone to check what time our dinner reservation was, and he pulled it away sharply. "I've got it," he said. Just like that. No explanation. No apology for the sharpness in his tone. I remember standing there with my hand still extended, feeling confused and a little embarrassed. "I was just going to check the time," I said. He softened. He always did that. He'd be cold for a moment, then immediately warm again. It was like emotional whiplash, but I told myself I was being sensitive. "I know, babe. I'm sorry. I'm just stressed about work." "It's nothing." I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Over the next month, small things accumulated. He wouldn't leave his phone on the counter anymore. He'd take it with him when he went to the bathroom. His password changed, I'm not sure when exactly, but I remember trying to use his phone to call his mom one day and it wouldn't open. "You changed your password," I said. It wasn't an accusation, it was just an observation. "Yeah, the office required it for security reasons. Something to do with the new database system," he explained. He seemed annoyed that I'd noticed. I didn't push it. That was my first mistake. What I noticed next was the way his responses to my questions started shifting. I'd ask him about his day, standard, normal relationship conversation, and instead of the detailed, animated stories he used to tell me, I'd get, "It was fine. Busy. Nothing interesting." When I pressed for details, when I asked about specific people or projects he'd mentioned before, his jaw would tighten slightly. You'd have to know him to notice. You'd have to be married to him to catch that micro-expression of irritation. "Why do you need to know everything about my work?" he asked one evening. "I don't need to know everything," I said carefully. "I just care about what's happening in your life." That's what people do when they love each other. "I know you care," he said. He was sitting on the couch, and he didn't look at me when he said this. But sometimes I just need space. Not everything needs to be a conversation. Space. Okay. I understood that. I'm a psychologist, well, I was studying to be one, and I understood the importance of boundaries and autonomy in relationships. I didn't want to be one of those wives who needs to know every detail about her husband's existence. That's not healthy either. So I stopped asking so many questions. But here's what I didn't realize: when you stop asking questions, you start filling in the blanks yourself. Your mind creates stories. Worse stories. Your insecurity works overtime filling spaces that should have been occupied by trust. The silence at home started becoming unbearable. Not the kind of silence that's peaceful, where you're just existing together. It was an active silence. A silence that had weight. We'd sit at dinner, and he'd be on his phone. When I'd ask what he was doing, he'd say, "Just checking emails," without showing me the screen. I'd accept this and turn my attention back to my plate, but my mind would spiral. Who was he emailing at 8 p.m. on a Friday night? Was it really work? 3 months into this strange new dynamic, I noticed the bank statement issue. We used separate accounts for our personal spending but maintained a joint account for household expenses, rent, utilities, groceries, that kind of thing. One evening, I was paying bills and I noticed a transfer out of the joint account. $5,000. To an account I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. I checked the previous months. There was a pattern. Regular transfers, usually around $3,000 to $5,000, going to accounts listed only by numbers and letters. Nothing explained. No memo. I sat at the kitchen table for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 15 minutes. My heart was pounding. My hands were cold. This was real. This was proof that something was genuinely wrong. When James came home that evening, I was sitting in the dark living room. "Jesus, you scared me," he said, turning on the light. "What are you doing sitting in the dark?" "I need to talk to you about something," I said. He immediately stiffened. I watched his whole body change. It was like watching a door slam shut. "Okay," he said slowly. "What?" "I was paying bills tonight and I noticed some transfers from our joint account. Large transfers. To accounts I don't recognize. Where is that money going?" The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. He didn't answer immediately. He walked to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, drank it, and then looked at me. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled but underneath it, I could hear anger. "You're questioning the household finances now?" "I'm not questioning," I said. But I was. And he knew it. "I'm asking. I have a right to know where our money is going." "It's an investment," he said. "A business opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" "Sarah." He said my name like it was a warning. "I don't have to explain every single financial decision to you. We're partners, not interrogators." The word interrogators hit me like a slap. I wasn't interrogating him. I was asking a legitimate question about thousands of dollars from our joint account. "That's not fair," I said. "This is money we both contributed to. You can't just move it without discussing it with me." He sat down on the couch, and when he looked at me, I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Contempt. Actual contempt. You know what, he said quietly. You're right. I didn't discuss it with you. And I'm sorry about that. But I'm discussing it with you now. It's an investment. A real estate opportunity with a friend from work. He's flipping properties, and I wanted to get in on it. I thought it would be good for our future. It sounded plausible. It actually sounded reasonable. But something inside me didn't believe it. Can I see the details? The paperwork, the agreement, something? Not right now, he said. He hasn't sent me the official documents yet. It's still in the early stages. But you've already sent $5,000? It's a commitment. Show of good faith. Every answer he gave me had a logical explanation. Every question I asked, he had a response. But they were all hollow. I could feel it. The way he was looking at me, not with openness, but with something calculated. Like he was testing how much I'd accept. Like he was playing chess and I was just a piece he was moving around. I don't feel comfortable with this, I said. What do you mean you don't feel comfortable? This is our future. Our investment. This could make us real money, Sarah. Real security. Then explain it to me in a way that makes me feel secure. Because right now, I don't. He stood up. He walked away from me, to the window, and he stood there with his back to me for a long time. When he turned around, his expression had shifted. The contempt was gone. He looked tired. Sad, even. I can't believe you don't trust me, he said softly. After everything we've been through, everything we've built together. You still don't trust me. And just like that, I was the bad guy. My throat tightened. Tears started forming. I do trust you. But trust isn't blind. It's not about just accepting everything without asking questions. That's exactly what it is, he interrupted. Trust is believing in someone even when you don't have all the answers. If you're constantly questioning me, constantly demanding explanations, constantly checking the finances and the phone calls and everything else, that's not trust. That's surveillance. I'm not surveilling you. I'm just trying to understand. You're making me feel like a criminal in my own marriage, he said. His voice was low, pained. Like I'm doing something wrong. And I'm not. I'm trying to build something for us. And you're making me feel like shit for it. I broke. I actually cried. I came off that couch and I hugged him, and I apologized. I apologized for questioning him. I apologized for not trusting him completely. I apologized for not being the kind of wife who could just believe in her husband without evidence. He held me, and he was comforting, and he said it was okay. But it wasn't okay. I knew it wasn't okay. Some deep part of me knew that I had just been manipulated into accepting something I was genuinely uncomfortable with. But I pushed that knowledge down. Over the next few weeks, I consciously worked to trust him more. When questions came up in my mind, I didn't ask them. When I felt suspicious, I told myself I was being paranoid. When I wanted to ask about his day, I held back, respecting his need for space and privacy. And you know what happened? The distance grew. We stopped having real conversations. We went through the motions. We made dinner together, but there was no laughter. We went to bed together, but there was no physical intimacy. He was there, but he wasn't really present. And I was there, but I was increasingly absent, absent from my own life, absent from my own thoughts, just trying not to rock the boat. One evening, about 2 weeks after the financial conversation, I was making dinner and he came home from work. He seemed lighter than he had in weeks. In fact, he seemed almost happy. He kissed me on the neck as I was chopping vegetables, something he hadn't done in a long time, and he said, "Something smells good." I felt a flash of hope. Maybe things were turning around. Maybe if I just kept not asking questions, if I just trusted, we'd get back to normal. "It's just pasta," I said, smiling at him. "Your favorite." "You're the best," he said. He sat at the counter and watched me cook, and we talked about trivial things. The neighbor's new car. A show we'd been watching. Normal stuff. And it felt normal. For the first time in weeks, it felt like we were just a regular couple. That night, after dinner, he was on his phone. He was always on his phone by this point, but this time he didn't hide it. He was scrolling, sometimes smiling at the screen. I was reading a book, sitting on the other side of the couch. I wasn't planning to snoop. I genuinely wasn't. But his phone buzzed, and the notification lit up the screen. I could see part of a message from someone named M. Can't wait to see you Thursday. My body went cold. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. He picked up his phone and the notification disappeared, and he kept scrolling like nothing had happened. Who was M? An hour later, I excused myself and went to the bedroom. I lay there in the dark, and I knew. I knew something was seriously wrong. The financial deception, the secrecy, the emotional distance, and now this. A message from someone that made him smile in a way I hadn't seen him smile in months. The next morning, I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I checked our phone bill online. I looked at his number and saw all the calls and texts. There was a number that appeared constantly, multiple times a day, every single day. In the evenings, late into the night. I didn't recognize the number. I was shaking. My hands were literally shaking as I held my phone. Every instinct told me to confront him. But I also remembered what happened the last time I questioned him. I became the bad guy. I became the paranoid, suspicious wife who didn't trust her husband. So I did something I'm not proud of. I called the number. It rang once, and someone picked up. Hey, a female voice said. Bright. Cheerful. Is this James? I hung up. My hands were shaking worse now. My heart was beating so hard I thought I might pass out. There was a woman. There was another woman, and he was texting her constantly, and she was texting him, and he was saying he couldn't wait to see her on Thursday. I went through the next few hours in a daze. I took a shower. I made coffee. I got dressed. I went through the motions of being alive while my entire world was collapsing. When James came home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table. I had rehearsed a conversation in my head about 70 times. Different approaches. Calm questions. Accusations. Pleas for honesty. Hey, he said, kissing the top of my head. He seemed to sense something immediately. What's wrong? I need to talk to you about something, I said. Here we go again. He sat across from me, and he was already on the defensive. He didn't even know what I was going to say, but he was defensive. Who is M? I asked. His face went white. Literally white. The blood drained from his face, and I watched him calculate his response. What are you talking about? He said, but it was hollow. He knew exactly what I was talking about. I saw a text on your phone. Can't wait to see you Thursday. From someone named M. Who is that? He didn't answer immediately. He looked down at his hands. Sarah. Who? Is. She? She's no one. She's a colleague from work. A colleague you text dozens of times a day. A colleague you can't wait to see on Thursday. You've been checking my phone. I saw a notification. And then yes, I looked at the phone bill. He stood up. He actually stood up and walked away from me mid-conversation. He went to the bedroom and closed the door. I sat at the kitchen table, and I was numb. This was it. This was the moment where everything fell apart. I had asked the question I wasn't supposed to ask. He came back out about 5 minutes later, and he was crying. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't say anything. I was waiting. Her name is Maya. She works in the marketing department. And yes, I have feelings for her. But nothing physical has happened. I swear to you. We've only talked. But I care about her, and I know that's wrong, and I've been trying to figure out what to do about it. The honesty should have been shocking, but it wasn't. I already knew. On some level, I had known the whole time. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked. Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want to hurt you. Because I didn't want to lose you. Because I don't even know what I'm feeling anymore, to be honest. But you were willing to lie to me. You were willing to hide it from me. You were willing to transfer money out of our account and make me feel crazy for asking questions about it. That's not, he started to say. That's exactly what happened, I said. The money. Was that for her? Or was that something else? He hesitated. And in that hesitation, I had my answer. It was for her, he admitted. Not directly. But there were some things she needed. Financial things. And she asked if I could help her. I felt like I was going to be sick. You gave another woman $5,000 from our joint account. I didn't give it to her. I invested it in something she was involved with. Oh my God. Oh my God, James. Do you hear yourself? You're describing yourself giving money to another woman while telling me we needed to be fiscally responsible. He looked at me, and I expected him to look ashamed. But instead, he looked angry. You know what? I don't appreciate being made to feel like a monster. Yes, I made a mistake. Yes, I should have told you. But this is exactly why I didn't. Because I knew you'd make me feel like shit for it. I knew you'd judge me. I knew you'd hold it over my head. I'm not trying to make you feel like anything. I'm trying to understand how you could do this. How you could lie to me repeatedly. How you could question me for asking basic questions while you're actively deceiving me. I think, he said slowly, that you need to accept that I'm going to make my own decisions about my friendships and my finances. I think you need to learn to trust me. I stared at him. I actually couldn't believe what I was hearing. You just admitted to lying to me. About money. About a woman you have feelings for. And you're telling me I need to trust you? I admitted to making a mistake, not to deceiving you maliciously. And yes, I think you need to work on your trust issues. I don't have trust issues. You have honesty issues. He looked at me, and his expression shifted. The anger faded, and suddenly he looked vulnerable. Sad. Broken, almost. I think I want to take some space, he said quietly. I think I need to figure some things out. Those words destroyed me. After everything, after the lying, the manipulation, the emotional distance, he was the one who needed space. He was the one leaving me. If you leave this house, I heard myself say, don't come back. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it at all. But I was so hurt and so angry and so betrayed that I said it anyway. He left. He packed a bag and he left, and I sat in our apartment alone, and I realized something. I had spent so much time not asking questions that I had stopped asking questions of myself. What had I become? A woman so desperate to keep the peace that she'd sacrifice her own integrity? A woman so afraid of being alone that she'd accept being lied to, manipulated, and cheated on? He came back 3 days later. He said he'd made a huge mistake. He said he'd broken things off with Maya. He said he wanted to go to therapy, that he wanted to fix things between us. And I believed him because I wanted to believe him. But believing him meant something had to change in me. Because if I continued to question, continued to push for transparency, continued to advocate for my own needs, then I was the problem. The paranoid wife. The one who didn't trust. The one who made him feel like a criminal. So instead, I learned to accept whatever he told me. I learned to smile and nod and not ask follow-up questions. I learned that asking questions, real questions, questions that demanded real answers, those made him distant. Those made him angry. Those made him pull away. And I couldn't bear him pulling away. I had already experienced what it felt like to lose him, and I couldn't do it again. We went to therapy. He was charming in therapy. He'd say the right things. He'd own his mistakes in a way that seemed genuine. The therapist told us we were making progress. And maybe we were. But the progress felt one-sided. It felt like I was learning to accept his behavior, and he was learning how to be more subtle about it. The next 6 months were strange. We existed in a kind of equilibrium. He was nicer. He touched me more. He made an effort to spend time with me. But there was a brittleness to it, like it could all shatter if I said the wrong thing. One evening, I made a casual comment about his phone. Nothing accusatory. I just said something like, "You spend a lot of time on that thing." His whole body tensed. "Are we doing this again?" he asked coldly. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I was just making an observation." An observation that sounds a lot like an accusation. It's not. "You know," he interrupted, "I've been really trying. I've been going to therapy. I've been putting in the effort. And you still find reasons to doubt me. You still find ways to make me feel like I'm doing something wrong." I apologized. I always apologized. But I had started noticing things again. Not because I was paranoid, but because they were there to notice. He was late coming home. Again. He had a new cologne smell. A subtle one he said was just a new product. His phone still got a lot of messages, but now he hid it better. Now he'd check it in the bathroom or the bedroom. Now I couldn't see who was texting. I knew I could ask. Technically, I had the right to ask. But asking meant conflict. Asking meant he'd get distant. Asking meant I'd be the problem. So I didn't ask. Instead, I lived with the uncertainty. I lived with the knowledge that something was wrong but the refusal to confirm it. Because confirmation would mean action, and action would mean loss. This is where I was when I found myself sitting in my car in a mall parking lot, terrified of my own husband. The thing nobody tells you about emotional manipulation is that it's not always dramatic. It's not always screaming and name-calling and obvious cruelty. Sometimes it's so quiet you almost don't notice it happening. It's the way someone makes you question your own reality. It's the way they convince you that your needs are unreasonable. It's the way they train you, slowly and methodically, to accept less and less until you're accepting nothing. That evening, when I got home from the mall, James was already there. He was making dinner, a gesture of affection that had become less frequent but still occasionally happened. "Where were you?" he asked casually. My stomach clenched. "Just the mall. I needed some time alone." "Why?" He wasn't looking at me. He was focusing on the stove. "I just felt like I needed to think. About us." He went very still. "What about us?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think something is still wrong. I don't think anything ever really got better after what happened." "It did get better," he said. His voice was tense. "I got better. I did the work." "I know you did. But something still feels off to me." He turned to look at me, and his eyes were hard. "You're obsessing over things that aren't there," he said. "You're creating problems that don't exist. You're making yourself miserable." "I don't think I'm making this up." "What, do you think I'm still seeing Maya? Is that what this is about?" "I don't know. Are you?" "Oh my God." He turned off the stove and faced me directly. "You know what? No. I'm not doing this. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life defending myself against your paranoia. It's not paranoia. It is paranoia. It's borderline obsessive. And frankly, it's exhausting. Do you understand how exhausting it is to constantly feel like you're being investigated? Like you're guilty until proven innocent?" I understood the feeling, actually. I'd been living that way for over a year. "I just want transparency," I said. I want to feel secure. Transparency? He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. What does transparency look like to you? Do you want to check my phone every night? Do you want to follow me to work? Do you want access to all my accounts? What would make you feel secure? I don't need to check your phone. I just need you to be honest. I have been honest. I came clean about Maya. I said I was sorry. I'm in therapy. What else do you want from me? Everything he was saying made sense logically. On the surface, it was all reasonable. He had been honest about Maya. He did apologize. He was in therapy. But underneath it all was a manipulation so clean, so perfect, that I almost couldn't see it. He was using my own need for communication against me. He was making my request for honesty seem unreasonable. He was positioning himself as the victim, a man trying so hard to be better while his wife continued to doubt him. And the insidious part? Part of me believed it. I opened my mouth to say something else, to try to explain what I was feeling, but he held up his hand. You know what, he said. Don't. Just, don't. I don't want to do this right now. I'm making dinner, and I'd like to just have a nice evening. Can you do that? Can you just be present and not turn everything into a discussion about what I might be doing wrong? And there it was. The line that would become his refrain. The thing he'd say when I tried to talk about anything that made him uncomfortable. Just be present. Just let it go. Just stop asking questions. I nodded. I didn't have the energy to fight anymore. We had dinner in silence. I wasn't present, not really. I was in my own head, spiraling, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. Trying to figure out how I'd become someone who was afraid to ask her own husband basic questions. It was that night that I decided something had to change. Not with him, I still wasn't willing to confront what was actually happening there. But with me. I had to figure out who I was again. I started seeing my own therapist. Not the couple's therapist, but someone just for me. I had given up on my psychology degree after I got married. James said it made sense for me to focus on making our home nice, and I had no career, no professional identity. I had structured my entire life around being his wife. My therapist, Dr. Chen, was gentle but direct. Why do you think you need his permission to have questions? She asked during our second session. I don't think I need his permission. I just don't want to upset him. And why is upsetting him worse than upsetting yourself? I didn't have an answer. What would happen if you did ask him the questions you're asking yourself? She continued. He'd get angry. Or he'd get distant. Or he'd make me feel like I was the problem. And then what? What's the worst case scenario? He'd leave me. There it was. The core fear. The thing driving everything. The possibility that if I wasn't perfect, if I wasn't accommodating, if I wasn't willing to accept whatever he told me without question, he would leave. Is staying in a relationship where you're afraid to have honest conversations better than him leaving? Dr. Chen asked. I didn't answer because I didn't know the answer. I wasn't sure which was worse, being alone or being so thoroughly not alone that I'd lost myself entirely. But something shifted in me during those sessions. I started noticing patterns in my marriage that I'd been trying not to see. The way he would make me feel guilty for my emotions. The way he'd twist conversations so that my legitimate concerns became symptoms of my pathology. The way he'd isolate me emotionally so that I had no one to check my reality against. 2 months into therapy, I told Dr. Chen about the financial transfers again. You never found out where that money actually went, she asked. He said it was an investment. Did you ever verify that? I shook my head. Why not? Because he told me not to. What did he say exactly? I tried to remember. He said that we just needed to trust each other. That if I was constantly digging into his finances, it would damage our relationship. Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. Sarah, $5,000 is not a small amount. If someone transferred that much money from your joint account, you have a right to know where it went. That's not about trust. That's about being a responsible adult and a full partner in your marriage. But he said. I don't care what he said, Dr. Chin interrupted gently. I care what you know to be true. Do you know where that money went? No. Then I think you need to find out. I went home that day and I did something I hadn't done in months. I asked a direct question with genuine follow-up. I waited until he was in a good mood. You learn to choose your moments when you're living with someone like this, and I said, hey, remember that investment you made? From our joint account? Yeah, he said cautiously. I'd like to see the paperwork. The contract, or the agreement, or whatever documents exist for it. Why? He asked immediately. Because it's my money too, and I want to understand what it's being used for. He didn't respond immediately. He looked almost caught. It didn't work out, he finally said. What do you mean it didn't work out? The deal fell through. I'm trying to get the money back, but my friend is having some issues. It's complicated. So the money is gone? Not gone. It's just tied up right now. I felt something crystallize inside me. How long has it been tied up? A few months. And you didn't tell me? I was going to. I was just waiting to see if we could recover it. It was a lie. Another lie. Another cover-up. I need to see something that proves this investment existed, I said calmly. Sarah. An email. A contract. A bank transfer receipt. Something. I need proof. He stood up. I'm not going to sit here and be interrogated in my own home. There it was. The same language as before. Interrogation. Like my asking for proof of where our money went was some kind of criminal investigation. I'm not interrogating you, I said. I'm asking for transparency about a large sum of money. And I'm telling you that I don't have to provide you with anything. That money was from our joint account, yes, but I'm allowed to make financial decisions without your approval. That's not how joint accounts work. Then maybe we shouldn't have a joint account, he said coldly. He walked out of the room. I sat there in the silence, and I realized I was never going to get a straight answer from him. He was never going to provide me with proof because there probably was no investment. That $5,000, and likely more that I didn't know about, had gone somewhere else. To someone else. Maybe to Maya. Maybe to someone new. Maybe to multiple someones. And he was never going to admit it because as long as I couldn't prove it definitively, he could deny it. As long as there was room for doubt, he could make me feel like I was the one with the problem. That night, I made a decision. I called a lawyer. Her name was Patricia, and she was a divorce attorney. I wasn't ready to file for divorce. But I needed to understand my options. I needed to know what I could do if I decided to leave. In most jurisdictions, Patricia told me over the phone, if you have a joint account, you have equal rights to that money. If funds were transferred without your consent or knowledge, you may be able to recover them. But you'll need documentation. I don't have documentation. He won't provide it. Can you access the bank statements online? Yes. Pull them. Get copies of every transfer. Look at the patterns. See if you can trace where the money is going. I did. I spent an entire evening going through our bank statements for the past year. There were 17 transfers, totaling almost $40,000. All to different accounts. All with no explanation. Some of the accounts had names. I did a reverse lookup on one. It came back to a law office. A divorce attorney in another city. My blood went cold. Was he planning to leave me? Had he been planning to leave me the entire time? I sat on the bathroom floor, the only room in the house where I felt like I could fall apart without him seeing it, and I cried harder than I'd cried in years. When I came out, I was composed. I had decided what I needed to do. The next morning, I told James the first was going to visit my mother for a few days. He seemed relieved. He actually seemed relieved to have me out of the house. "That's a good idea," he said. "You've been so stressed. A break will be good for you." I wanted to scream at him. But instead, I packed a bag and I went to my mother's. I didn't visit my mother, though. I went straight to Patricia's office. "Based on what you've told me," Patricia said, reviewing my notes about the bank transfers, "I think you need to take immediate action. If he's consulting with a divorce attorney, he's likely planning to file. When he does, he'll be in a much better position than you if you don't protect your assets first." "I don't want a divorce," I said. "I understand. But you need to be prepared for the possibility. What if I just confront him? What if I ask him directly?" Patricia looked at me with something like pity. "Sarah, based on everything you've described, the manipulation, the financial deception, the emotional control, if you confront him, you're going to tip your hand. He's going to move faster. He's going to hide more money. And you're going to lose leverage. So what do I do? You gather documentation. You make copies of everything. You open your own separate account and slowly move your money there. You document his behavior. And you prepare yourself for the possibility that this marriage is going to end." I did what she suggested. Over the next 2 weeks, I got copies of our bank statements. I opened a new account in just my name. I made copies of every email from James the First could find that contradicted his explanations about where the money went. I documented dates and times when he'd come home late smelling like someone else's perfume. I wrote down every conversation where he'd manipulated me or made me feel crazy for asking reasonable questions. And then I went home and I waited. 2 weeks later, I came home to find a lawyer's letter in the mail. James was filing for divorce. He had the audacity to seem surprised when he saw me reading it. "I was going to tell you," he said. "When? After the divorce was finalized?" "Sarah. Don't do that thing where you try to make me feel like I'm overreacting. You've been meeting with a lawyer for months. You transferred $40,000 out of our joint account. You've been emotionally distant and deceptive. And you were never going to tell me. You were just going to file and have me served." For the first time, I saw something like shame cross his face. "I didn't know how to tell you," he said quietly. "There's no good way to tell someone you're abandoning your marriage," I said. "But you could have tried honesty. You could have sat down and had an actual conversation instead of skulking around like a coward." He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. "Who are you right now?" he asked. "I'm someone who finally stopped asking your permission to have feelings," I said. The divorce was messy. He claimed the business investment was legitimate, but he couldn't provide documentation. The court was skeptical. With Patricia's help and my documentation, I was able to recover a significant portion of what he'd transferred out. I got the apartment. I got a settlement that would allow me to go back to school. The hardest part wasn't the legal process. The hardest part was realizing that I had allowed this to happen. That I had made a conscious choice to stop trusting myself in order to maintain peace with someone who didn't deserve my peace. I spent the 6 months after the divorce was finalized in therapy, rebuilding my sense of self. I started back at university. I didn't date anyone. I focused on remembering who I was before James, and figuring out who I wanted to be after him. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I saw James at the grocery store. He was with someone. Not Maya, someone new. They were laughing, and he was doing that thing he does where he makes you feel like you're the only person in the world that matters. I realized something in that moment: he wasn't a monster. He wasn't fundamentally evil. But he was someone who had learned that charm and manipulation were effective tools for getting what he wanted. And as long as people let him get away with it, he would keep doing it. I thought about how many times I'd asked myself if I was being paranoid, if I was being unreasonable, if I was the problem. And I realized that question, that constant self-doubt, had been his greatest weapon. Here's what I want you to understand if you're in a situation like the one I was in. Trust is not the opposite of questions. Safety is not the opposite of communication. Love is not supposed to mean losing yourself. When someone tells you that asking questions means you don't trust them, that's a red flag. When someone makes you feel guilty for wanting transparency, that's a red flag. When someone isolates you emotionally so that you have no one to reality check against, that's a red flag. I didn't recognize these flags because I was too busy trying to maintain peace. I was too busy trying to be the kind of wife who didn't nag or question or investigate. I was too busy trying to be accommodating that I forgot to be myself. The real tragedy of my marriage wasn't the betrayal or the deception or the financial manipulation. The real tragedy was how easily I surrendered my own voice. How quickly I learned to prioritize someone else's comfort over my own integrity. And the beautiful thing that came after was learning that my voice matters. My questions matter. My need for honesty matters. And I don't need anyone's permission to have any of those things. I'm now 3 years into a career I love, studying psychology to help people who've been in situations like mine. Because I understand now that manipulation works not through force but through making you doubt yourself. It works by convincing you that you're the problem. If you're watching this and you're in a relationship where you're afraid to ask questions, I want you to know, that's not normal. That's not love. That's control dressed up in the language of peace. Real peace comes from feeling safe enough to be yourself. Real love comes from being seen and accepted, not conditionally, but completely. I'm grateful for what I learned from my marriage, even the painful parts. Because now I know what I will never tolerate again. And maybe, by telling my story, someone out there will recognize themselves and find the strength to ask the questions they'd been too afraid to ask. Thank you for listening to my story. If this has resonated with you, if you've felt yourself in any part of what I've shared, please comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've experienced something similar. And please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future stories about real-life experiences, about relationships, about the things we go through that we sometimes feel too ashamed or too confused to talk about. Because your story matters. Your voice matters. And you deserve to be heard. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.